Hi, everybody. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss how data insights can assist companies in hiring the correct contact center agents, as well as how to optimize agent performance through augmented intelligence. Today, by industry expert and the CEO of Principal Decisions, Jaco Rousseau. And for those of you who do not know Jaco yet, Jaco has just over 30 years of experience in software development and solution delivery, of which the last 20 plus years has been focused on the design and delivery of data-driven solutions across Africa and the Middle East. Now, Jaco holds a BSc with majors in mathematics and computer science. Welcome, Jaco.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on what I'm sure is going to be an interesting discussion. Look forward to it.
We're also joined by Dr. Anne-Marie Lombard. She's the founder and CEO of Sensory Intelligence Consulting. Welcome, Anne-Marie. It's a privilege to have you joining us today.
Hi, Perry. Hi, Jaco. Lovely to be here. Yes, and always nice to share the stage with other human beings and talk about what's happening in our wonderful industry. So happy to be here.
Dr. Lombard has over 30 years national and international clinical experience as an occupational therapist in learning and development. Her doctorate research was based on comparing sensory processing with performance, absenteeism, and attrition in contact centers. So she's the ideal person to join this panel today. So with introductions out of the way, let's lay the foundation for today's discussion. With the advances in technology over the past few years, the importance and relevance of contact center agents has been the source of much discussions and often heated debates. At Principal, we've always been a company with a core focus on delivering analytical insight and data-driven strategies to our customers. In recent years, we have placed a keen focus on the human interface and how to leverage human ability and behavior to ensure optimal execution of those analytical insights and strategies. But before we get to the discussion on augmented intelligence for agent optimization, we must start at the beginning, employing the correct person for the job. Now, this could easily be the start of a catastrophe or a success story, especially with the increase in work-from-home environments, which we've seen in the past few years. How can we ensure that we hire the correct candidate for the correct position within a contact center? To answer this, I'm going to hand over to Anne-Marie to tell us more about how our brains are wired, and most importantly, how this understanding can assist us in appointing the correct agents. Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Perry. Obviously, this is a debate and I guess and a discussion that's going to stretch possibly much further than what I'm going to share with you on this call. So I'm just going to share you my viewpoint, my opinion, and my background. The whole point is, if we look at the contact center industry by default, what it looks like, it is a very busy, stressful, engaging, high impact, sensory overloaded type of an environment. And we do know the stress levels and what our agents typically are being exposed to in this industry is really, really high. So obviously, apart from the skill set and the right exposure and the right experience and the intellectual capacity, the scholastic feedback or background that these individuals might have, the work that I'm doing is going a lot more deeper into human behavior by default. The first thing that really comes to mind is, if you put someone in that crazy busy environment, do they have the innate genetic capacity to cope with all of that information? And that's kind of have been my area of expertise for the past, 35 years. I'm giving a little bit away of my age here. But the reality is, if we want to optimize people, we need to put them in the best fit type of environment for them. And that's exactly what my research was doing. I think the first time as an occupational therapist, I stepped into a contact center industry. I'm like, oh my word, do they really expect people to work here? I was kind of blown away by that dynamic. Needless to say, it became the perfect data space for me to look at research. And obviously, I went out to say that there's a certain type of a person that's going to actually thrive in a contact center industry. And then there's a person who's going to literally, I want to say, die a little bit every day in that exact same space. That's fundamental human behavior. How we look at it is we determine people's, we call it neurological thresholds. In other words, that's your sensory sensitivity. Are you very distracted or impacted by noise or people in your space or smells around you, because we know about 20 to 25%, and some of my research goes high up as 28% of people struggle with all of that background noise. And I was thinking last week, before voting, I had all of these calls from all the political parties, and I know if I pick up that call, I know this is a contact center call, because you can hear in the background, I can barely hear the agent speaking to me on the phone because of all the background noise. So it's a fundamental human behavior. We need to consider the sensory sensitivity, the neurological threshold that people have as human beings, and how can we match that to that particular environment to optimize function. So my research was really about that. Look, everyone has got a place in a contact center space, because if you look at it, there's your front office sales type of an approach, which is typically even busier, more pressurized. But then you also might have someone working in a small team doing quality assurance. That space actually operates very differently from if we look at the stress and the sensory overload ratings that we see there. So using this science, really it's a science and it's a human behavior principle, we can actually match people to the particular space within the contact center. Period. I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit into what has happened since COVID hit and we all are working from home. Silently, I'm ecstatic about what COVID has done for the environment that we can choose now from that type of perspective. I think home working is something that we've been supporting throughout. We as a team have been working at home since 2012. So the reality is, if you're in your home working space, there's a lot more control that you would have over it. So typically the kind of person that might not cope in the front office sales type of a position in a call center where there's anything from 400 to 1,000 people sharing a space, these type of people would actually work really, really well in the contact center space. So environment in our world is key, because the environment is going to be a predictor of people's performance. Now, I know sometimes people might be at home and there's a dog and a child and 5 other people working in the same space, which then make that environment less ideal. But if we look at the human processing of how does our brains take in environmental stimuli in order for us to be focused, to be intact, to keep our emotions and our behavior aligned so that we can produce the best quality of work, environment is really, really critical. And we can literally set people up for success, or we can literally set them up for failure. Perry?
I think this is very important what you just said. And I think that's something that we haven't really thought about a lot, to say, you've got these call center agents who perform great in our call center. Now they're working from home and you don't see the same performance. Is it because they've got freedom of space, but you never thought of the psychological part of it, like you just mentioned? That's not their area where they really thrive in. And that could be the reason. So I think for me, coming out of what you just said is the importance of really understanding what type of a person fits in what area and which area. Like you mentioned as well, there's place for all of them. It's where in that crazy environment must they really fit in, and that I think that's where the types of you really come into in order to direct companies. I must say I've seen it so many times. Where we look at agents, which you can see is a great agent, but they're battling to cope in a certain circumstance. Then we see them as not good agents, where they can actually be good agents. They just move from an area and we don't understand the psychological part of that.
Exactly. Perry, I've been involved in so many of these case studies where we had underperformers and we literally just changed the space that they're working, or sometimes even their seating, moving them out of a cluster in the middle to the corner with drastic impact and changes in their performance, which kind of doesn't cost you anything. So maybe just an elaboration on that. The whole new hybrid working model is phenomenal. And with the hybrid working model, our tools have got the capacity to help people to say who should go back to the office, who should actually stay at home, and who can you actually use this type of a blended approach for. So primarily, this is going to help people to get the fundamentals of how their brain process the environment is going to set that right. This is all unconscious. None of us know really about this because it's a part of the brain that kind of happens under the radar. basically, if you want to call it say it from that way. So I just think it's a fairly easy yet very scientific and practical way to optimize contact center staff, contact center employees, for sure.
No, thank you very much. I think very valid points. I think a lot of things that we never thought about. And for the audience out there that's listening today, you know, if you're interested in these tools, it's available out there. You may not use it. We know the importance of it, especially now after COVID-19, when we start to implement hybrid solutions. Go and look at that. Go and look at that tools that's available. I will put on a link as well. You'll see the link to it. Get in contact with Annemarie, please, and see how you can really optimize. It's not necessary for us to think that technology is going to reduce our call center agents at all. There's a place for them. We just need to know where to use them optimally. Thank you, Annemarie. So over the past few years, the significant advances that we've seen in technology, and especially in artificial intelligence, have sparked increasing fears of massive job losses. At a Parliament Committee meeting in September 2019, on the fourth industrial revolution, trade unions have raised their concerns regarding the impact of further job losses, given the record unemployment rates that we are currently seeing in South Africa. Principal CEO, Jaco, has often stressed the role and responsibility of all South African businesses to ensure that while we absolutely need to remain competitive on a global scale, we need to do so through the creative and responsible application of technology within the context of our reality, especially within South Africa. We need to, whenever possible, augment human performance rather than replace it. Now I'm going to ask Jaco to discuss the dangers of indiscriminate automation, especially in contact centers, as well as how augmented intelligence can optimize agent performance. Jaco?
Thanks, Barry, and thanks, Annemarie. I've jotted down a couple of points that I think actually ties in nicely with the theme of augmented intelligence and the work that you do in terms of essentially creating data points on humans, right? And using those data points to optimize performance, which is what we're talking about. But before I get there, I'm a storyteller by nature, so I'm going to tell you a few stories today, and then I'm going to share some thoughts, and hopefully, you know, some of those will stick and influence your decisioning in this regard. But so my interest, and I think currently bordering on an obsession in terms of augmented intelligence and how we use, call it technology and analytics for good, really started way back the early 2000s, turn of the century, where I was living and working in Switzerland. And we took a trip one weekend. I think we're driving to Lucerne or somewhere. And somewhere out in the countryside, there was roadworks in that beautiful, idyllic Swiss scene. And as we approached the roadworks, I saw a cardboard cutout of a guy waving a flag. Now, and I looked at that and I said to my wife, you know, this is such a simple solution, but can you imagine the impact in terms of unemployment if this thing had to be exported to South Africa? And saying it, you know, a little bit in jest at the moment, but that's the thing that started sparking the thought. And so, you know, this whole issue around how do we marry progress, technological advancement against I don't even want to say societal responsibility, our human responsibility, is not new, right? I think because of the rapid advances in technology, it has become more prevalent and it's become more topical and probably more severe than ever before. But, you know, if we take simple first industrial revolution with mechanization, you know, mankind was, and horses especially, were suffering. But so, you know, so that was a good as the steam engine started rolling out, it really did create thousands of new employment industries, you know, in terms of engineers, maintenance, steel engine drivers, and the horses and the oxen all sighed a collective sigh of relief. So it was not as emotive, even though, you know, we sometimes do look back to the good old past, and we, you know, you look at those scenes where a man tills his fields with a with a horse, and it feels like something was lost. But it's not a new problem, and it has repeated itself through the second and even the third industrial revolution. And we have sometimes knowingly and unknowingly found the balance in terms of the need to progress with the need to do the right thing in the interest of the country or the society in which we operate. And so again, I like to go from the known universe to the unknown, because I firmly believe that there is nothing new under the sun. The example I want to use in this case is like petrol attendants in the forecourts in South Africa, and also, you know, born from that observation where we're living in Europe, where everything is self-service. Labor costs are extremely expensive, so you basically do everything yourself, you know. So and then coming back to South Africa again with that realization, understanding the massive impact it will have on employment if we had to export self-service fuel pumps to South Africa. Now, there's only one reason why self-service fuel pumps has not been adopted in South Africa, and it's not because South Africans are generally not intelligent enough to operate them. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not because we can't afford them. It's not because we don't have the infrastructure or the technology to successfully deploy them. It is pure and simple for the reason of retaining as many jobs as possible. Now, I like as simple as it may seem, I like self-service, or I like a petrol pump and the role of petrol attendant to describe this, because I don't know if you've noticed also in the last year and a half, the advances in the fuel stations, you know, in terms of those petrol pumps. So they got preset configuration in terms of either money or liters that you want to dispense. They've got those digital tags, so that only the attendant can actually unlock the pump, and only that particular attendant's key registers on that pump. Those pumps are electronically or connected to the point of sale systems in the store, usually in the fuel station. And the petrol attendants themselves, lately, I feel they're all using these touchscreen point of sale devices. So this latest generation of point of sale devices. So if you look at the advancements and the technologies deployed in the forecourt, even where we deploy manual labor, you know, it's a beautiful example of how we can remain competitive. I would argue that you'll probably get your car filled up far quicker in South Africa than any other place in the world where you have to do it yourself. So this trade-off in terms of recognizing the need to retain employment, but also acknowledging the need to remain competitive and to actually deliver a service while utilizing all the available technologies. I mean, it's around us every day. We don't even think about it. We don't question it. No one is protesting about rolling out, you know, self-service fuel stations. And so I like that as an example. It's where we as a country collectively accept that, and we work with that, but we move forward. I want to also, so that's the thought, and that we can talk about. Also I guess the philosophical idea that sits in my head around this topic also. I'm an avid reader, and I'm a great fan of Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know, Anna-Marie, if you've ever read any of Vonnegut's books, but he wrote the book in 1965. And there's a quote in that book that when I read it, has stopped me in my tracks, especially if you consider that he wrote it in 1965. And I'll share the screen quickly, just so you know. So this is a straight extract of the book, and that quote, it was quite possibly the most important social experiment. But essentially, its theme is the how to find the balance between sophistication of machines and the value of a human, right? And this is long before the era of AI and machine learning as we know it, and it's a question that still needs to be answered, right? And so what we're talking about. What is the value of a human? What is the value of an agent? What is the value of a South African worker? I want to put it that way. And so that is what I'm passionate about. I as you've said there, Barry, I absolutely believe in our, first as a leader of Principia, we need to be successful as businesses. We need to make our clients successful. We need to keep them at the forefront of technology. We need to keep them competitive, because the world doesn't care, right? The world just goes where value and efficiency is highest. And so I believe it is our responsibility to apply our minds how to use technology analytics in order to strike this balance. And I believe that balance can be struck, like I've demonstrated as an example with the petrol attendants. So that's my thoughts in terms of, and why I specifically say indiscriminate automation. I do believe there's a place for automation. There's a lot of back-end processes, highly inefficient, that begs for automation. And there's also ways in which you can apply automation. So if we then step to the second part of the question, leading into augmented intelligence, and maybe stopping at what is the value of a human, so many papers have been written in terms of the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. And many of those papers actually highlighted the fact that in this era of automation, machine learning, self-service, digital engagement, there is ironically going to be an increased demand for human interaction, right? So as you automate the simple processes and the simple interactions, by the time a human needs to talk to a human, they want to talk to a well-informed human. And so we all have those experiences, right? Typically with your favorite mobile cell phone provider, where, you can literally pull your hair out trying to get to the right person that can actually help you. So the pressure on the pressure and the appreciation of well-supported, well-placed agents, the right agents in the right location for the right role, to actually drive human interaction is going to increase. So the value of a human is actually going to increase. So the question now is, again, within our realities, how do we make that happen? Because to Anna-Marie's earlier point, whether it's through, our historic disadvantages, whether it's through a lack of access to proper education, whether it's through a lack of access to funding for higher education, the reality is that a large portion of our contact center workforce, they have not received the level of and quality of education that would have made it possible to just simply deploy them into higher specification positions, or even out of a contact center. For many of those people, it's an incredibly hostile environment, if you understand what I'm saying, to the points that Anna-Marie has been making. And it's probably it's going to be their career. For a few of them, they're lucky. It's a launch pad. It's a way to get onto the next thing, to generate enough funds to do what they want to do. But for a great many of them, that is where they are working. And so we absolutely have to then understand, if we appreciate that's the value of a human, if we understand that's going to be the demand created through all of this automation and digitization, then we need to apply our minds to how to empower these agents. The second thing, or second thought I want to leave on that is also, we in this era of digital self-service. I mean, all three of us, no doubt, most of your interactions with your bank is through the app and digital, and through the chat bots, or, if you want to pay something, it's online. And everyone is comfortable with that. And every business that wants to compete in this era need to enable those digital self-service channels to its customer base. But again, everyone is happy to talk to a machine until the answer is no. And so, if you're applying for a study loan for your child, and I mean, you as a parent, naturally, you are biased, you see their potential, you're applying for a study loan, you're happy to apply online to follow the digital channels until the response comes back that says your application has been rejected. Then you want to talk to a person to explain to them why your child is unique, what the situation is, whatever the issue is. You all would have experienced that in your own lives, the point at which you want to talk to someone that can help you rather than a machine that just gives you a standardized response. So the other point I want to make is, again, regarding the value of contact center agents and South African contact center agents in particular, is that South Africa, as you know, has been awarded the #1 BPO outsourced destination title, I guess, after we've been trailing India for many years. This year is the first year that South Africa is a #1 BPO center in the world, or outsource center in the world. And so it's clear that even internationally, there's a high recognition, whether it's timeline, whether it's our accents, even though some people might disagree when they listen to you and me, Perry, but we apparently have a very neutral accent that the world loves. And then purely our people, you know, the disposition of a South African call center agent, their ability to engage and to fulfill, you know, for big international brands. So there's no question that this is a challenge, but it's a massive opportunity in terms of how do we recognize human value, how do we empower it. And so that's what leads me then to augmented intelligence. So I'm saying then, if we want to do the right thing, if we understand the need for businesses to be competitive, if we understand the value to South Africa as a country in terms of our position in the world from a contact center perspective, and if we understand the importance and the value of human interaction, specifically at a specific stage in the life cycle in your engagement with a specific company or service provider, then we need to apply our minds and say, okay, how do we make humans perform at a superhuman level? How do we make that hostile environment a lot more palatable? And so this is where I see these worlds merging now, right? The science that Anna-Maria is specializing in is also a data science of sorts, right? So she's creating behavioral data points where the principal world, human behavioral data points, we all in the world in terms of transactional financial behavior and the data elements that a customer generates in their journey with a specific service provider. And you can see how the science is fundamentally actually the same. So augmented intelligence is about how do we use this incredible capacity that exists now in terms of executing complex and even simple algorithms to generate data insights. How do we marry that world, that data-driven world, data science, execution technology? How do we bring it to the human front end? And Perry, you and we've spoken about it at many conferences, this gap between man and machine. And again, I think it's similar to some of the points that Anna-Marie raised, is that businesses in general, they invest millions in infrastructure, strategy, product development, but very little to identify the right agent in the right position in that building or at home, focusing on the right role, whether it's QC, outbound sales, late stage collections, early stage collections. And similarly, that we've also experienced as Principal where clients would invest millions in developing extremely sophisticated predictive models to drive a particular strategy, whether it's outbound sales, customer retention, collections. And then very little to actually deliver a fairly complex message or insight to an agent operating in a very hostile environment, And so this is the gap between man and machine. How do we close that gap? And for me, that is the role of augmented intelligence. And you can actually make it wider and say, well, augmented intelligence starts by placing the right agent in the right position. It continues when you look at your existing workforce, optimizing that workforce. So if you have an existing workforce and you don't have those insights, well, get those insights. And you will find, I'm 100% sure, those insights will correlate highly to the sort of placement optimization models we built in the past, where you look at an agent's performance in a particular segment in collections as an example, and therefore move certain agents to work on particular parts of the portfolio because the data tells you that's where they perform better. I'm 100% sure if you use the human behavioral data elements that gets generated, you'll find there's a high correlation. I mean, and there's always place for common sense, right? So it's nice to talk about technology and analytics, and then, you know, can we also please make the case for common sense? And so, again, you know that your soft-spoken relational agent is not the type of agent to put on late-stage hard collections, right? So these are early-stage customer retention, customer relationship people. So a lot of these things we knew intuitively, but our knowledge stops at a certain level, and I think that's where we need to apply the science. So for me, augmented intelligence is all about how do we support a human to operate in a hostile environment and get a superhuman result? How do we increase the outcome? How do we create an environment where this person is motivated and inspired, you know, to work and to get a measure of satisfaction out of that work? And then also, how do we, again, use technology to deliver complex insights in a simple manner that an agent can consume? There's another story I neglected to mention it earlier, but also what sparked part of this. I was at a conference about 6-7 years ago where Dan Ariely was the keynote speaker, and I'm sure Anna-Marie knows him and his works well, but he wrote Predictably Irrational, so all about behavioral science. And he mentioned one of the experiments that he mentioned to demonstrate the power of human behavioral science and understanding what drives human behavior. It was this thing where they wanted to measure adherence to taking chronic medication. So they had two test groups, and they gave them all digital pill boxes on the assumption that if you open the lid, you know, that you have probably taken your medication for that. And so the first group, they said to them, they're going to measure whether you take your chronic medication daily. After 30 days, if you have taken it every day, they will enter you into a draw for a prize. I don't know what, television, whatever the prize was. And you could then win a television, right? So if you take your medication. The second group, they said to them, at the end of 30 days, they're going to draw the prize. If you've taken your medication all 30 days, then you keep the prize, otherwise they draw again. And so, you know, again, from a principal perspective, from a data science perspective, from a statistical perspective, the odds are exactly the same, right? You know, the very first day that you don't open that lid, that, you know, you are not going to win the prize. But yet the second group had a significantly higher adherence because of this human behavioral element of losing something that you perceive to have been yours, you know, this loss aversion. And so when I listened to that, I also thought, you know, where is the biggest concentration of people in our client base, where this is a simple element? How do you inspire, how do you motivate humans to perform? And so again, using technology, and I mean, we know about gamification to encourage performance and to get buy-in, but again, using technologies like that within the call center environment to actually encourage and motivate in a positive way, right? So we're talking carrot rather than stick, you know, we're talking about how to leverage human behavioral elements for good, you know, and to get people to perform at their best and beyond. And then just last point on that. So we've spoken a lot about augmented intelligence, you know, using analytical insights, delivering those insights to agents in ways that they can consume easily. So augmenting their intelligence in terms of a customer engagement, and then also delivering it in a way that is simple and easy. delivering it through a platform that drives engagement and motivation. And then the last place, specifically in this agent optimization space, the responsible application of automation. And so, again, from these elements that I've discussed, we're talking about how do you increase an agent's performance in terms of the outcomes of the calls they're having, right? Give them more insights, better guidance, analytical insights drive the outcome, whether it's collections, sales, customer service. The place of automation in terms of agent optimization, as I see it, is how do we use automation technology to allow an agent more time for human interaction? In other words, let's look at what an agent does in the fulfillment of a specific task, right? Let's look at the elements of that task that can be automated so that that agent can spend more time talking to humans, because that's the value, human-to-human conversation, and not back-end updating documents and systems and sending emails and whatever, which is the outcomes of a successful call. So essentially then, looking at human agents, empowering them through augmented intelligence, and then providing them a digital assistant, if you can put it that way. So using automation technology to actually alleviate some of the drudgery, if you want to call it that way, things that take time. So now we're not just reducing the time that an agent spends on a specific call, we're also maximizing the outcomes of those calls. And that will give you an incredibly efficient and competitive contact center environment, coupled then with having the right agents in the right seats, in the right locations, focusing on the right segments of what we're doing.
Jaco, thank you very much. Yes, I think, you hit the nail on the head. There's two things that we really need to understand and need to accept. And that's the importance of human agents, first of all. It's not going away. We've seen it. Agents is there to fulfill a specific duty. People want human-to-human interaction. We know that. We've seen the rise in BPOs, like you mentioned, in South Africa. We won't see that type of rise if we believe that there is no human-to-human conversation necessary. So it's required. And then the question that a lot of people will ask ourselves is, okay, but how do I empower them? And we've really seen today, it is not as difficult as we think to empower them. We sometimes need to take that one step back and not just think technology, but think people. Start to put ourselves in the place of that agent. How do we find that agent? How do we assess those agents for our company? If we have that agent, where to place that agent? And if we've placed that agent, how do we provide them with the right information to do their task to the best outcomes? What have we seen? We've seen in so many call centers, our agents that just work in a call center don't perform. Then you introduce a simple concept of taking information and transferring it into visualization, because we've now realized that the human brain works that way. It absorbs visualization much faster than what it does on text. Take a few of those data elements, transfer it into visualization, and that agent starts to flourish because he's empowered. I think the time to sit back and just think technology, 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 and not bring technology and the human element together has passed. Companies that don't start to embrace these aspects, use technology, use data science, use human behavioral science to make our call center world a better place, is going to reap the benefits on that. Anna-Marie, from your side?
Yeah, thanks. Jaco, obviously very interesting stuff. Look, I'm an absolute supporter and a lover of technology and all the artificial and all the wonderful things that you guys are doing with coding and algorithms. I think it's amazing. But the one thing that I want to draw your context back to is, like, humans are fundamentally built around social beings and emotional connection. And if any organization wants to stay at the top of their game, it's about absolutely the best customer experience that they can possibly deliver. And yes, augmented intelligence and all the technology definitely make a lot of those things easier, faster, faultless, and more efficient. But we can never, ever, ever think that we need to take the human out of the equation, because I think the human interaction and the emotional connection that we form with our clients is the definitive factor. I mean, I'm looking, even if you look at the industry, even if you look at marketing, I'm interested. The other day, I read something about emotional marketing. I mean, as I think the world get more technologically advanced, there's this similar quest running on the sideline. How do we maintain that human element? How do we stay emotionally engaged? How do we stay really connecting with our clients? And it's just interesting from a research point of view. I'm writing up research at the moment, and I've been doing a lot of reading on what has COVID, for instance, done to the human psyche across the board. And if we just look at isolation and not having physical human contact, it has huge impact on the mental health of people, the way that they work, their productivity levels. So as a bit of a sideline maybe, but I think it really plugs into how do we marry human and machine, because we need to actually make sure that both of these two entities meet and that the human element is maintained and optimized as much as you possibly can. Perry, and I loved your fact that saying, okay, the time has come to not just look at technology and also look at the people engagement. I think that has always been something in the call center specifically that hasn't got, I think, enough attention that it deserves. And I do think those companies that actually looking at both empowering, training, educating, coaching their particular agents after filtering them through correctly is going to be the ones that's going to, outdo their competitors. So the human element cannot be stressed enough. So yeah, that's just what I was wanting to add to it.
No, thank you very much. And I really want to thank the panel, Jaco and Anna-Marie. Thank you very much for your insight today. It's really appreciated. For those out there that's really interested to change your environment, get in contact with us, get in contact with Anna-Marie. I'll place all the contact details in there within this webinar. Please think about those people. Think about the changes that you can make in your call center environment. The time is now to really change. The time is now for us in South Africa to make a call center environment what it's never been. So let's go out there, let's use the data. And yes, please join us next time for our next webinar. Follow us, and thank you very much for your time. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thanks, Perry. Thanks, Anna-Marie. Take care. Bye-bye.